Welcome back, music lovers. Today we are diving into the rich and captivating world of Lyrita Records, a treasure trove of classical British music that has been enchanting listeners for decades. From rediscovered gems to iconic recordings, Lyrita has a legacy of bringing orchestral brilliance to life. Whether you're a lifelong fan or discovering this label for the first time, get ready to explore the stories behind the music and the artistry that makes Lyrita Records so special. Let's get started. But first, thank you for your continued support and patronage. It is very much appreciated as we make our way to 7,000 subscribers. You can catch more Audiophilia on my Instagram and at the main magazine. Now, notice how I pronounce the name Lyrita, not Lyrita, as I've been doing so for 50 years. Lyrita Records was founded in 1959 by Richard Itter, hence Lyrita. Itter's record company was born out of a deep passion for British music. He believed that British composers deserved the same recognition as their continental counterparts. With a commitment to artistic excellence, Lyrita set out to record and preserve the music that spoke to the heart of the British people. In a world dominated by the great European classical traditions, one record label dared to amplify the voice of British composers, Lyrita Records. So what set Lyrita apart? It wasn't just their focus on British music, but their unrivaled attention to quality. Richard Itter personally oversaw every detail, from selecting the repertoire to working with the best musicians and engineers. Lyrita's records were known for their crystal-clear sound, captured using state-of-the-art technology and mastered to perfection. More on this in detail in a bit. Lyrita's catalog is like a treasure chest for anyone interested in 20th century British music. They gave voice to composers who might have otherwise been forgotten. Composers like Edmund Rubbera, William Alwyn, Alan Rawsthorne, Frank Bridge, Arthur Bliss, Gerald Finzi, John Island, and many others found a home at Lyrita when no one else would record them. Lyrita collaborated with legendary conductors like Sir Adrian Boult, but also invested in many lesser-known British conductors. They also used top-rank orchestras like the London Philharmonic and the Philharmonia to bring these works to life. Vernon Handley, for example, a passionate advocate for British music, became one of Lyrita's most prominent contributors, recording definitive performances of countless works. Itter knew that he had to up his game from the mono releases he was engineering and was a big fan of Decca. Through the auspices of famed Decca producer John Colshaw, Itter got Decca involved in his recordings, and from 1966 with SRCS 31. Note the stereo catalog prefix SRCS. Decca took over Lyrita's record pressing, producing, engineering, and locations. Lyrita had, for all intents and purposes, become a Decca product, but under the leadership and specific direction of Richard Itter. As such, Lyrita employed Decca legends like John Dunkley and Kellen Wilkerson for engineering, and were able to record in places like Kingsway and Walthamstow. Decca pressed all Lyrita's releases up until 1979, when Decca decamped for the Netherlands. So if collecting, look for the date and the Decca stamp of approval in the dead wax. Later, Lyrita returned its pressing to England and began using the Nimbus pressing service. These releases and represses are easily recognized, this time by small hand-etched matrix numbers and Nimbus England stamped in the runout. They have a good reputation, but the gold standard seems to be SRCS 31 to 116, all pressed at Decca's famed New Malden plant. Itter did not like the compact disc or the digital process, so after his passing in 2014, Lyrita's legacy lived on thanks to the efforts to digitize and reissue their catalog. Now, new generations continue to discover the brilliance of British composers. But today we are focusing on their all-analog vinyl releases between 1966 and 1979. I'll discuss some of the gems I've collected, and I'll put up a slide giving you all the audiophile pertinent information. So now to the fun, unscripted part. I don't know why I'm so late to the Lyrita party. I mean, I've known about them for many years. I even had a George Lloyd Symphony Lyrita copy, probably about 40 years now. So I've known about their audiophile prowess, and I guess after 5 years of study in London, I'm aware of all the English composers, and I've played lots and conducted some. Anyway, even though Lyrita is still the golden child, it's not all lollipops and candy, and I think the main reason is the repertoire. There's lots of amazing repertoire, and there's, of course, Holst and Walton, and Vaughan Williams represented, and Elgar too. But there's also some really minor composers that you may not be into, Cyril Scott and others. Anyway, these are the SRCS in my collection. And look for the slide in case I miss some info as we chat. We have here SRCS 70. That's the Mooren Symphony in G minor. Jim Norris, who's on our live stream every week, and one of my oldest friends, and studied viola and voice at Trinity, and then singing at the Royal College of Music, where he got to know a lot of these English composers, where they studied. That's where the English movement in the early 1900s started from, with Charles Villiers Stanford and Parry, the two composers that started basically the revolution in English composing. So he got me onto this Mooren Symphony. I've never heard of. I mean, I've heard of Mooren, but never heard any of his works. And it's an absolutely knockout symphony. So if you can get a hold of this, I think it's nice to get new repertoire. And boy, it's new and really an outstanding symphony. It's not. It has English moments, if you know what I'm talking about. But it's not just another Vaughan Williams knockoff or an Elgar knockoff. It's really unique. It's beautifully orchestrated. And this recording by the New Philharmonia at that time, speaking of the Philharmonia since then, conducted by Sir Adrian Boult, just absolutely magnificent in every way, shape, and form. Beautiful symphony, beautifully played, and beautifully recorded. I bought the next record on a whim because, I mean, I'd heard of Gerald Finzi, of course, but I didn't know a lot of his music. I knew his clarinet concerto, which is very beautiful. By the way, Lyrita has a great version by John Denman. He was actually in my father's class at the Royal Military School of Music, Nell Hall in London, and one of the greatest clarinet players ever to come out of the British Army. And his recording on Lyrita is fantastic of the clarinet concerto, and I'm going to be looking for that. It's a late SRCS. This one, though, this is SRCS 84. Music by Gerald Finzi, including a 7 Rhapsody, Introit for Small Orchestra, Nocturne, which is, it is so beautiful. And then we've got the Prelude for String Orchestra, 3 Soliloquies for Small Orchestra, Romance for String Orchestra, and Elegy for Orchestra. So you can tell they're kind of small-scale works, but very, very beautiful. Harmonically, it has this English idiom, but it's gentle and it's relaxed. And this is played by the London Philharmonic, conducted by Adrian Boult, with Rodney Friend as the solo violin. He became the concertmaster of the New York Philharmonic and later the BBC Symphony. An amazing violinist, and he sounds beautiful on this recording. But again, the recording is exceptional, and the playing is equal to it and beautifully interpreted. You're not going to get this to rock your world. It's for contemplative listening, late night listening, but it is absolutely beautiful. I highly recommend it. And I wasn't going to get it, but I love the cover. And wow, it's one of my favorites. I've listened to it many, many times. So SRCS 94, Sir Lennox Berkeley, maybe a composer that you haven't heard of, maybe one of those composers that were kind of a minor composer, like I mentioned at the beginning, like Cyril Scott. Notice how I'm pronouncing it, Berkeley, not Berkeley, in the English Berkeley. Sir Lennox Berkeley was quite a famous composer during my time in England. In fact, he was a professor of the Royal Academy for many, many years. He also came down for Prize Day, 1981, and gave us all our prizes and our degrees and diplomas. And he was a lovely man. He's also a very fine composer. And the reason I chose this, I don't know the piano concerto in B flat. This is with David Wilde and the New Philharmonia, conducted by Nicholas Braithwaite. And it's a lovely piece. You're going to find Berkeley's music very tonal, beautifully constructed, lovely sounding music. The recording is just outstanding. And if you want to get it for audiophile recordings alone, it's good enough. But the music, I think you'll really enjoy. And the reason I purchased this one, but the Symphony No. 2, we gave one of not any close to the first performance, composed in 1956. But Berkeley revised it in 1976 and asked Bernard Keefe, our music director at Trinity College of Music and the Symphony Orchestra, if we would play it. And Bernard was always very accommodating. And yes, so we rehearsed it and played it in performance at St. John Smith Square in the presence of Sir Lennox Berkeley, and he was very appreciative. So yeah, it's lovely tonal music, played very, very well by the LPO. Lovely melodies, great orchestration. And I can highly recommend this. Give it a try. And we get to the famous or infamous now for price SRCS 109 from Lyrita. It's the Malcolm Arnold dances. What we have is the 8 English dances, the 4 Scottish dances, and 4 Cornish dances, played by the London Philharmonic, conducted by the composer. Malcolm Arnold is a very good conductor, by the way. It's magnificent in every way. It's a very, very famous recording. It's one of the top audiophile recordings. Harry Pearson made it famous in the Absolute Sound List. And I got it recently. It was not cheap. They were running about $400 US on Discogs and eBay. And then one fell through, and I got another one, but it was VG Plus, so it was less, about $200 US. I offered 160 very cheekily, lowballed him a bit, and he was very kind and accepted it. So I got it for 160, which is still a very expensive record in these days post FOMO. But when I put it on and listened to it, by the way, I did it on the Degritter, and it cleaned it up beautifully. It's like near mint, and it's just magnificent. It's everything you'd expect this record to be. It's very expensive. I mean, even $160 these days for a record is very expensive. So you may not want to get it, but if you get a chance to listen to it in a store somewhere, that it might change your mind. You might start saving for it. I can highly recommend it. It's one of the greatest sounding records in my collection. The performance by the London Philharmonic is great. They've recorded this several times. There's a very good digital recording on Naxos, cheap, $7, cheaper than this record, by the Queensland Symphony. It's very, very good. I forget who the conductor is, but it's very good on Naxos. But they all compare to this. Even the LPO's other versions, I think they've done it on EMI and a few other places. But this Lyrita version is magnificent. Highly, highly, highly recommended. Did I say highly recommended? And this is SRCS 112, the Finzi Cello Concerto in A minor, Opus 40. Written at the very end of Finzi's life. In fact, he heard the world premiere at the Proms on the radio in his hospital bed the day before he died. He died of lymphoma. He was quite young. It's a shame. This is Yo-Yo Ma's very first recording, 1977, 4th of July, at Watford Town Hall, engineered by Stanley Goodall and conducted by the great Vernon Hanley with the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra. It's an absolutely beautiful piece. I prefer this cello concerto to the Elgar. In fact, I also prefer the Walton cello concerto to the Elgar. The Elgar's a great concerto, but I think it's overdone, a little bit like the Dvorak. If you love cello, try and get this record. First of all, Yo-Yo Ma, he's not the finished product. There's some intonation things, and his sound doesn't project quite as well as later on in life. But it's very beautifully played. For a young man, gorgeous. The sound of the Stanley Goodall recording at Watford is absolutely beautiful, as you would imagine. If you love cello, this is an easy buy. The recording is wonderful. The performance, the orchestral playing is fantastic in it. And it's not sleepy time Finzi. It's really very dramatic. It's a 40-minute concerto. And there's a lot of dramatic parts in it. The cello part is very difficult. So yes, highly recommended. SRCS 112. Yeah, it's a definite buy. This next one is SRCS 124, a really late Lyrita, so much so that I went in and looked at this incredible PDF from Royal Holloway College of all the Decca recordings and information. I'm going to link that below because I think you guys will really enjoy it. All the recordings, analog, then digital in London, and the Swiss recordings, and it's really wonderful. And so I got all of my information from that PDF. And this George Lloyd one, I was really worried that they went into June of 79 when they switched to digital. And I was thinking, oh, is this digital? I've loaned it for 40 years, so don't be ridiculous, Anthony. If it's digital, it doesn't matter because it's an amazing sounding record. But actually, it was recorded earlier than its release date, and it's pure analog. And it's just one of my favorite recordings of anything. It's the orchestra, the Philharmonia with Edwin Downes, Ted Downes. A wonderful conductor, very underrated. But George Lloyd was that very interesting composer that was in the British Merchant Marine and during the war, and he got shell shocked very badly, had a very bad nervous breakdown, quit composing, became a market gardener, as they call them in England. He raised mushrooms and he raised carnations. And then about 25 years into that, he got better and started composing again and had this incredible second session as a composer. And a lot of his recordings were done on Lyrita, and he's a great composer. But this Symphony No. 5 is a masterpiece. 5 very, very interesting movements, played beautifully with wonderful solos. The woodwinds, oh my God, the Philharmonia woodwinds in those days, 1977, 78, were just fantastic. And they sounded on here. The percussion are wonderful. There's great sounds. It's a very dynamic recording, but it has that beauty, that Lyrita beauty. So I can highly recommend Symphony No. 5 by George Lloyd. A wonderful symphony. These are the 2 Elgar symphonies conducted by Sir Adrian Boult. Symphony No. 1 in A flat with the London Philharmonic Orchestra. That's SRCS 39. And Symphony No. 2 in E flat, also conducted by Boult with the London Philharmonic, and that's SRCS 40. Both of these were recorded by Kenneth Wilkinson, and they're wonderful recordings. As performances, they've received mixed reviews over the years. I never heard them before I got the Lyrita ones. I've heard his famous ones on EMI, and they're wonderful. Played also by the London Philharmonic Orchestra. But these, I think, have got a bit of a short shrift. One is outstanding and could be your first choice, up there with Barbaroli and the Philharmonia. And one, not quite as strong, but certainly the equal of Boult's EMI version with the London Philharmonic. So let's go with number 1 first. Symphony No. 1 in A flat major, Opus 55. What a beautiful symphony. Just gorgeous melodies, perfectly formed movements. And the symphony became very famous very quickly. Elgar was already a star after the Enigma Variations, and Richter got them in Germany. And through the loving support of his wife, she never gave up on Elgar. And she kept pushing, and he came up with the Enigma Variations. But it's wonderful. It's beautiful melodies, and his orchestrations are second to none. They really are. A lot of times you get a lot of the, quote, pomp and circumstance with Elgar. But in these 2 symphonies, you really get the very, very best of Elgar. Up there with the Violin Concerto, and In the South Overture, and of course the Enigma Variations. Symphony No. 2 is a much more difficult symphony to play and conduct. I've played both. I've never conducted either, but I do know that Symphony No. 1 is easier to play. Symphony No. 2 has some very, very challenging parts. The scherzo especially is very difficult. But it's much more advanced than the first symphony in the fact that the orchestrations and some of the musical ideas, again, loads of beautiful nobilmente, as he calls it, melodies, a beautiful larghetto, as I said, a fantastic scherzo, very challenging. And a good finale. The finale is not quite as good as the finale of the first symphony, I don't think. The performance is excellent, but I think that Boult's EMIs are the equal, maybe even a little bit better. Of course, played by the same orchestra. Now, the recordings, oh boy, the second symphony is excellent with Ken Wilkinson again. But something happened within, I think it was about a month or 2 in between the recordings. The Symphony No. 1 is one of the best recordings I've ever heard. It's just, as recorded sound is concerned, it's just magnificent. So, I mean, you're going to need the set. But if I was going to go for one, I'd get SRCS 39, the Symphony No. 1. It's just about the best you're ever going to hear. But Symphony No. 2 is also a fabulous performance and a great recording. So that's it. Lyrita, the classical music gold standard. Fascinating repertoire, captured to perfection by the world's best engineers in the best halls. About 100 all-analog records. You could probably grab 50 or 60 that would suit your tastes. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support is very much appreciated. Stay well, and we'll see you in the next video.